Welcome to Strive with Crystal, where we speak truth, seek healing, and shine light on the power of resilience. Let's break the silence around mental health together. I am your host, Crystal Mullen Johnson, a licensed therapist, a mentor, a leader, a friend, a mother, a sister, and most importantly, your number one supporter. We will have real, honest conversations to educate, empower, and help you build resilience as you strive toward a healthier you. Come along with me to see things crystal clear. Today, we're having an important conversation about race based stress, a topic that impacts countless individuals, yet often goes unrecognized or unspoken. Joining me today is author, educator, and thought leader, Dr. DeWayne Stallworth. His work explores the lasting effects of racism on individuals, families, and communities. In his book, The Problem of Black Skin challenges us to examine both our history and our healing. Whether you've personally experienced discrimination or want to better understand how race impacts mental health, this conversation is for you. So, welcome, Dr. DeWayne Stallworth. I'm so excited to have this conversation. I wrote about race based stress in the Birmingham Times, experience that I've had directly and vicariously encountering race based stress has impacted me in some ways, right? When I learned about your book, I knew I wanted to engage you in this conversation, and you will be presenting at Nurture of Alabama's Community Mental Health Initiative event on Saturday, and you're having a conversation with our attendees about race based stress. So I knew it was important to have this topic so we can reach a broad range of individuals where they can receive this education to improve how they cope with it and just bring awareness to this topic. So let's start with the basics. What is race based stress?
That's a loaded question, but I think we can kind of nuance it and people can get a full description of kind of what we're getting at today and also this weekend. So I think if we're going to unpack race-based stress, we can replace race-based stress with race-based trauma. I
I
think
like that.
trauma has to be a contextual grounding for this conversation because
Okay.
everything stems from the experience of that impact. And so when we do look at how does stress affect Black people versus how does stress affect any other people, we can center that conversation in the amount of trauma experience historically. And so
Okay.
for Black people, historically, trauma goes back to the 1400s in terms of understanding what chattel enslavement did to Black people. That same experience did something to white people.
Okay.
And after slavery, quote unquote, is over, mechanisms were put into place that were oppressive that would somehow situate Blackness in a quasi type of slavery, but nevertheless, slavery. So you pack that experience with trauma beginning in the 1400s, from 1400s to the 1800s, 1865, for instance. There is the experience of what it means to be property, what it means to be raped, what it means to
Wow.
be flogged, what it means to be purchased. Your property, your chattel, you have no human worth, you have no value, you belong to another human being. And this
Okay.
type of trauma is transferred from generation to generation to generation. So we move forward into the 20th century, and
Mhm.
there is some type of work being done in terms of understanding what it means to be Black, to be segregated, to be oppressed, to be other. This happens early in the 1900s in terms of the academic framing of race-based stress or trauma. It's only
Okay.
in the past 20, 25 years where we see that kind of funneled down to specifics. For instance, now we have a connection between what academically and clinically is known as post-traumatic stress disorder is now connected to the experience of chattel enslavement. And we know this from books such as Greer and Cobb. For this talk, I was looking for my book, Black Rage. It's a wonderful book, but
Yeah.
that was a seminal work in its own language, articulating how that transference comes over in genetic inheritance. And of course, pushing forward, we have Joy DeGruy, who
Okay.
actually names it
Okay. Yeah.
post-traumatic slave syndrome. So it makes the connection. So all of this is about connecting the dots, showing that what happened in the past affects the present, and it affects the present on a continuous basis. No other race has to cope with that type of angst, that type of anxiety. And so that the everyday stressors that people face that are non-Black are quite different from just this perennial anxiety that people live in, Black people live in, consciously and unconsciously. And that's the dangerous part, because sometimes we don't even feel it, but
It's interesting when you spoke about how that term was originated and the connection to the past. You dated us back and you brought that to the present. And I was reading this book. It's called It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wallen. One of the quotes in the book, it really resonated with me, but you just said it. It states that the past is never dead, it's not even past. And that's quoted by William Faulkner. So these statistics were alarming to me that I identified. And according to the Association for Behavioral and Cognitive Therapies, race based stress was developed a term to capture the unique negative impact caused by racist and discriminatory experiences. And research indicates at least 63% of Black Americans, along with 47% of Latinx Americans, 6% of Asian Americans, 5% of American Indians or Alaskan Natives, and 4% of multiracial individuals endorse experiencing at least one racially charged trauma in their life. What are some symptoms that you're familiar with associated with race based trauma?
So this is an excellent point. We should differentiate good stress from bad stress.
Okay.
And again, I think the framing has to be put in a context where we can really, really get it, because I'm happy that you're bringing this to the table, because it's a complicated situation that we kind of just put in this box and said, this is it. And it's far, far from that. So framing it as such, let's look at the nervous system.
Okay.
And so the human nervous system is designed to be the command center, so to speak. Everything for your body, everything that you do, think, process comes from this command center. And so that runs from the base of your spine to the top of your head. Okay.
Correct.
That is the command center. Then you have the periphery. And from this point of departure, you have nerve cells that branch out and communicates every single thing that you are experiencing or will have to experience. So this system, the way that it's set up, is not designed to take on shock after shock after shock. That's the difference. Black people, nervous systems get a shock after shock after shock after shock. Now, the nervous system is brilliant. It's magnificent. It's designed to do what it is designed to do, which is to create order, structure, and to move things freely. Black folk can't do that. So we don't process emotions well because of this. Everyday stress is not a shock. It's a tap. It's a bump. It alerts the nervous system to motivate, to do things, to get things accomplished. That's the purpose of your nervous system, to kind of say, hey, let's get this done. Let's do this. But no stress, just get it done, get it done.
Yeah.
That's every day, and that's normal. But that's not what Black people experience. We feel that shock. And so the nervous system, at some point, again, it is a brilliant structure, but at some point it just shuts down. It can't take the shock after shock after shock. And so that translates to things that you are identifying. organs shut down, the body begins to kind of try to compensate. So you sweat more, your kidneys fail, your heart, all these different components happen because we don't understand that we are on a 24/7 cycle of shock and we're
Right.
not meant to exist that way.
Dr. Stallworth, I mean, he's so intelligent and
Ah, don't do
he's
that.
educated us on the vagus nerve. That's what you're
Yeah,
referring to. So it's
yeah,
the vagus
absolutely.
nerve, which is the longest and one of the most important of 12 cranial nerves.
Hmm.
And these nerves start in your brain and branch out to your head. And the vagus nerve runs from your brainstem to your heart, lungs,
Hmm.
digestive control those essential functions, your
Hmm.
blood pressure,
Yep.
breathing, digestion, heart rate. And so you explain, that fight or flight response, right? None of us are really accustomed to functioning in that fight or flight state,
Right.
constantly, even in a stressful state. Some
Yeah.
people have heart attacks, not even realizing that they're under tremendous stress. But when our brain sense danger, our bodies what can kick into overdrive, like you just
Yeah.
explained. And there are fear that are associated with things that we see, touch,
Hmm.
taste, and
Hmm.
hear.
Hmm.
Right? And so our senses alert us of those things. So what I also wanted to highlight here, as a result of these responses, like some people are aware, they go to the doctor because they're not feeling well. And I find that doctors that recognize that their clients are under tremendous levels of stress, obviously, after a stress test has been administered, they will refer them out to therapy, which is appropriate. I just greatly admire when doctors do that, really
Absolutely.
care for their patients and encourage them to attend to their mental health. But we know that when individuals are harmed by this type of stress, they experience what? Depression, anxiety. We talked about the headaches, upset stomach, humiliation. That is
Yes.
significant. Difficulty sleeping and
Yep.
nightmares, reoccurring thoughts about what happened because
Hmm.
of. So we're going to dig a little deeper.
Okay.
Um, so, can you define, and I think this is so important, defining racism, discrimination, and microaggressions? Like, can
Okay.
you? Okay.
So, again, I just think so contextually, I'm coming off of an 8-year study of what it means to exist in one's blackness.
Mhm.
And so it certainly hits me in a different way. I understand the complexities involved with trying to unpack it because I've been in it for so long and so intimately. And I think the misconception about racism is that there's a detachment from the lived experience. So the critique and the observation of what happened, but there's a disassociation from the experience for a lot of Black people. So we can talk about the past, we can talk about chattel enslavement, but rarely do we connect ourselves to that experience as if a bygone phenomenon that has no connection with us. And I do understand how this could be a reality for a lot of people. But we have to push against that and get people to understand that racism is so much more complex than us understanding that white people did this to us. And now we're still kind of suffering from that same type of experience and philosophy of otherness, etc. So there has to be some type of middle ground where we say, let's contextualize what this means. Not theoretically, because theoretically, people will say that race is not real. It is a social construct. And this is true. Race is a social construct. Racism is a social construct. But
Okay.
what makes up society? Individuals. And just because we theoretically say that, well, they're nonsensical because this doesn't even exist, does not take away the experience that occurred to those in our past and also for us in the present. So
Okay.
we have to go back and understand, yes, there was an engagement between anxious white men who desire to obtain wealth at the expense of Black bodies. Also in that narrative, we have African women who also saw potential in this economic advancement and social advancement and wasn't coerced. A lot were, but some went willingly
Right.
and cohabitated, had sex, produced with these Europeans, enslaving people that looked like them. There were black men known
Hmm.
as the watchdogs.
Hmm.
So their profession was to secure, brand, arrest, contain blacks while they were being seasoned to go off on the ship into the Caribbean. That kind of mentality toward other blackness carried over. It wasn't just hate from whiteness, it was
Hmm.
also that experience that carried over. And so
Okay.
centuries later, what do we see? We see the phenomena of the field nigger and the house nigger.
Hmm.
That's
Okay.
so that experience was situated on the beach with the African woman and the black African man making that decision to choose economic growth,
Okay.
security, stability at the expense
Mhm.
of people that look like them.
Okay.
So that has been a theme for black people since our engagement with chattel enslavement. Not only do we have to deal with whiteness, but we also have to deal with blackness. So that's a part of racism. And the other piece, Crystal, is we have to come to terms that we too are racist. So in the problem of black skin, I step out and I acknowledge this, that I hated white people. And I had to locate that anxiety in a very deep place. But it surfaced when I was in the experience of seeing so many black bodies being tortured, name after name after name. We can go down the list. And this is roughly around 2020 when black bodies were just being done poorly in the open. I have white colleagues around white people, working with white people, doing research. I felt a certain way about them.
Okay.
They had no connection with the events of Breonna Taylor. So there are
Right.
times where we will be in racial situations where we think that, oh, this is that. No, that is you.
Right. Right. I agree. And so it's interesting that you brought us to this point, and I asked you to explain what is discrimination, what is racism.
Mhm.
And in your book, you had an opportunity to share a personal story in the problem of Black skin. And so when you describe your first direct experience with racism, when you were just 10 years old, you tell the story in your book while attending elementary school in Demopolis, Alabama. I'm a native of Demopolis.
Yeah.
We attended the same elementary school.
Yeah.
So we have a long term relationship.
Yeah.
And I too have had some encounters. When I was in high school, we had a segregated prom. And so that
Yeah.
was back in 1998. People
Mhm.
don't believe that when I tell them, but it
Right.
is true.
Right.
And Demopolis, still somewhat is segregated.
Of
All
course.
right. So we have our side of town, their side of town, but we choose to go to their side of town and live in their communities,
Right.
but there
Right.
is still some segregation. So can you tell us about your experience?
Yeah, sure. So it was a rather illuminating experience for me. Illuminating because that was the first time in 10 years in this body, me looking at my skin and not liking the reflection.
Okay.
Not because of something that was in me, it was because of what a white person did or said. And so that is the illuminating piece for me. But contextually, the story is that, as boys do, we were, at recess and, during that era, basketball cards, sport cards were the thing.
Mhm.
And so we would bring our sports cards to school, exchange them, trade them, and, just admire just the hobby of collecting these sports cards. And
Mhm.
one day I had never seen a Michael Jordan basketball card in
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a table full of white kids, and I'm standing overlooking at them.
Hmm. Okay.
And one kid brings out the card and he's passing it, getting ready to pass it to another white friend. And
Hmm.
so I said, oh, and I reach for it. And he slaps my hand back
Okay.
and tells me, get your dirty black hand, keep your dirty black hand off my stuff. And everyone laughed.
Yeah.
Everyone laughed.
Right.
And I physically retreated and I emotionally retreated. I psychologically was defeated
Of
in
course.
in that instance because I did not know that was just a lot for a 10-year-old. I had never ever been talked to that way from a white person.
Right. So you experienced that shock, right?
It
The
was a
fact that
shock.
absolutely
It was a
right.
shock.
And that experience has resonated with you throughout your life,
Absolutely.
right? And
Absolutely.
so let's talk about epigenetics and
Okay.
generational trauma. Okay. So this is one area of research that fascinates me. Research suggests that trauma experienced by one generation can influence how future generations respond to stress. In a 2014 JAMA psychiatry article on epigenetic mechanisms of depression, Eric
Mhm.
Nestler wrote, stressful life events have been shown to alter stress susceptibility in subsequent generations.
Right.
Research following the September 11 attacks found that pregnant mothers who developed PTSD gave birth to children with altered cortisol levels and heightened sensitivity to stress. Other studies have shown that children whose mother experienced significant anxiety during pregnancy were more likely to develop emotional and behavioral challenges. So, in your book, I found interesting. And I was like, all of this is connected. And I talked to my clients
Mhm.
about epigenetics. I mean,
Mm.
because it helps them better understand why
Nice.
they behave the way they do. And I think that
That's
is
right.
significant. So that's why
That's
those are
right.
so important. So in your book, you mentioned, according to current epigenetic research, behavior can be passed down. For argument's sake, let's presume that the white boys, especially the bold one who slapped my hand, learned that black skin has social limitations from their parents and grandparents. Pressing it a bit further, let us presume that the parents and grandparents learned it from their parents and grandparents, and so on. This generational trajectory places the origin of the problem of black skin in America within the mid 16th century, as outlined in Winthrop Jordan's classic White Over Black. Thus, at both conscious and unconscious level, the laughter, disrespect, and physical aggression displayed that day, my white peers were the result of centuries old cultural inheritance that defines Black skin as socially and culturally problematic. And we're seeing this play out in our country with
Mhm.
Mark and Michelle Obama. So, can you help us understand, talk a little more about race based stress and epigenetics through your
Sure.
research?
And I think that research is extended now to 20 plus years now. I think you hit it on the head. If we're talking about epigenetics, we're talking about so there is a source for your anxiety, your pain, your lived experience. There's a source behind it. And however far you are away from the source intends that you get what it wants you to get. And that's
Right.
done through nodes that we can define as family, as bloodlines. So that's how we get what we get. Unconsciously, some genes are so powerful that
Mhm.
racism manifests in very in your face type of ways.
Right.
The Confederate flag, for instance,
Correct.
that's an epigenetic inheritance. Okay. There is no reason why a white person in 2026 should have any knowledge of what that means. And if they do know what it means and they fly it, they are letting you know what they think about you.
Correct.
Okay. So those people are not, the energy never dies. You can't
Okay.
you can't get rid of energy. it only transfers and
It
shifts,
does.
right? And so that's
Absolutely.
what we're getting when we're talking about how people come to this place of hating Black skin.
It is. And we also see this in our culture too.
Oh,
Have you
absolutely.
done any studies on colorism?
So a significant piece of my research is dealing with the notion of Black privilege.
Okay.
And this is a very difficult subject for Black people
It is.
because we want to put all of the blame on our oppression upon white shoulders.
Right.
That would be good if we did not assist them putting trauma on the shoulders and backs of Black people.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So we can have that conversation too at some point, but it is an experience for Black people.
My theory regarding this, Crystal, is that regarding the bloodline piece, so for instance, if we can connect, and this research has not been done, but if we can connect a bloodline, let's say from 2026, Black person, if we can connect their bloodline to, let's say, the 1400s, and they had a father, a great grandfather, someone that decided that they were going to side with these white folk and gain an economic advantage, a social
Mhm,
advantage, and
mhm.
line up with them and treat Black people in adverse ways. That energy transfers to the next generation. This is why there were towns and different businesses in Africa that were based generationally because family, it was a family business. And so these things transfer. And my theory is some Black people that act the way they act toward Blackness today is a result of their connection, perhaps with a bloodline that connects back to something like that.
And I also wanted to share this quote here. It say the most powerful ties are the ones to the people who gave us birth. It
Mhm.
hardly seems to matter how many years have passed, how many betrayals there may have been, how much misery in the family. We remain connected even against our wills. Quoted by Anthony Brandt. And so I just think that is significant. And this conversation is not to shame or
Absolutely
reject
not.
a culture
Absolutely not.
because I serve all people.
Absolutely.
But this conversation is about self-awareness. This
Mhm.
conversation is about how to cope and
Right.
how ways to heal. And that's what we're gonna, wrap this conversation up with. Let's talk about, how can someone that is experiencing race-based stress cope? I would love to share my perspective as a clinician, but I want to hear from you. What type of feedback do you have regarding that?
Regarding someone who is attempting to embrace the trauma associated with their color of their skin.
Or to cope when they have an encounter with someone.
So I think a great practice is understanding, again, context is everything for me. So a context also offers a point of departure. And a
Okay.
point of
Like,
departure in this instance could very well be every time I encounter a white person and there's an altercation, I
mhm,
want to plug that and note, how does that make me feel?
mhm,
What am I feeling?
mm,
What was I thinking?
mm,
How did my body react? Did my muscles tense up? Did I begin sweating or did I lose my voice, which
mhm,
is an issue of self-efficacy? So
mhm,
all these different components matter in that one instance.
mm,
What happened to me when I had that altercation with that white person? The other
mhm,
is what is happening to me when I'm around white people without the altercation, when I have to speak with them, be in their
mhm.
presence, indulge them in some of their shenanigans, perhaps. We will call code switching to a degree.
Okay, yes.
What is that feeling? What is that feeling? And then the last leg would be, what am I feeling when I'm around people that look like me and I'm talking about all this? You began to kind of get a gauge of your emotional state, where it resides, where it fluctuates, where it curves, where it's just linear. And then you can begin to control those experiences. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense,
Okay.
and that's why therapy, I think, also is a great space to receive
Absolutely.
objectivity from a licensed professional to
Absolutely.
guide you through, some cognitive strategies,
Mhm,
your
mhm,
thoughts, your emotions, and why you behave or respond the way that you do.
mhm.
I think that is critical, and I love the fact that you said identify why I feel the way I do, because
Right.
we do have to understand the root cause of our responses when we
That's
are
right.
with discrimination, microaggression,
Right.
not just with white people, but Black people. I mean,
Take your power
both.
back. Take
Yeah,
take your power
correct.
back.
Take your power back. And so we're talking about protecting your peace, learning how
Mhm,
to establish boundaries, right?
mhm.
And that could be like even now we see a lot of information in the news that people are having like vicarious trauma
Yeah.
with, and some of us have our direct experience,
I think that's needed though, Crystal.
Mhm.
And so in your language, that would be flooding,
It's
you
called
know,
flooding. Yeah, it
and
is.
I think that's needed.
Okay.
I think in a safe context,
In a
that's
safe
needed.
country.
Because if it doesn't happen, if these things are not exposed, but again, this is how smart the body is.
Mhm,
And the
mhm.
nervous system will push things up to the surface to get you to recognize things that you have to confront.
Right. And confronting the emotions, right, with the
Yep.
flooding approach helps us learn how confronting means learning
Mhm,
to regulate your emotions
mhm,
when you're faced with those conflicting situations. As a clinician, there are a few things that I want to offer of how to regulate when the vagus nerve has been activated. And one of those things is breathing,
mhm,
being mindful of your emotions, and there are different breathing exercises. So that is one way. Positive affirmations. I like
mhm,
healing statements.
mhm,
I
mhm.
am worthy. Embracing your culture. I think that is so important.
Yep,
Learn about your culture. Some of us don't spend time understanding who we are,
that's right.
right? I think those things are critical. And also engaging with people that respect you,
Mhm,
value you, laughing more.
mhm.
So, those are some great coping
That's important.
strategies. It is very important. Find you a great comedy show to watch
Mhm,
on TV
mhm. You
or
know, a cool little trick for that.
what is that?
So the brain doesn't recognize what is 3D, what is physical, and what is imagined.
Okay.
And so you can go back to, and I do this often, you can go
Mhm.
back to a moment where it was just funny. It was a funny moment. And you just burst out laughing.
Right.
That tricks your brain to think
Yeah.
that you're in that moment and
Mhm.
your energy level changes. And so that affects the vagus nerve, the nervous system.
Yeah. And then thinking about the positive experiences that you've had
Oh, yeah.
with the opposite race,
Yeah.
if you've been impacted. So I think those things are significant. So I have a question. How should parents talk to their kids about race-based stress?
That question breaks my heart because I have to be honest about it. I've been talking to parents over the past 3 years, and I don't have to give them a dissertation on a lot of that. But if you're in my space, then I think it's my duty to kind of keep you abreast as I move forward. You know what I'm saying? If you look like me, we can
Okay.
all move together.
Mhm.
People with children that want to be in white space, I have to be honest with them and let them know. We need to know that there are groups that have been mobilized and they
Okay.
they have sinister, sadistic plans about eradicating people that look like me and look like
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
And they're going after that generation. And
Okay.
so now we're seeing a lot of accounts where Black teenagers have gone missing. And when they
Ab-
find them, they're hanging from trees
yes.
or they're in
Yeah.
ditches. I just saw something with another teenager from Mississippi that went out for the 4th with white friends on a boat. He's missing, he's dead. And so, what you can't really say anything to parents that don't want to understand what you've just brought to bear. You have to understand the culture and the society in which we
Right.
live. It's not
Right.
safe for Black people to be around just white people right now.
Right.
Someone has to say this. The evidence is there. Historically, the evidence is there. But we are afraid of voicing our concerns because the other dysfunctional piece, Crystal, is we, as bad as they treat us, we still want to be them and we still want to be in their space. We still want what they have. And so that's a lot of the dysfunction that we
Hmm.
have to contextualize when you ask such a question as, DeWayne, so what would you say to parents? It's a complicated, it's a complicated, I
Yeah.
want to give them a heart, but sometimes we don't listen. And sometimes
Right.
our children pay the price.
Right. And so we do have to talk about healthy boundaries. I think that is significant.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, if someone is listening today that has been silently carrying the weight of discrimination, biases, or racial trauma, what would you want them to know?
Mm. I want them to know that the secret lies within you. Everything is there. So
Hmm.
all of the anxiety, all of the distractions, all of the things that keep you pulled away and not centered in self and trying to become the best version of yourself, there's a reason behind this. There's a
Okay.
reason behind why the music is the way it is, the way the food is the way that it is, the way conversation and everything else. They don't want you to get in here because
Okay.
we can get over this hump. And I can end out what I'm going to say with this quote: Einstein. And so he has a book, a small book, The World as I See It.
Okay.
And in that book, there's a section on minorities. And then he funnels down and he talks about Negroes. Einstein says that, in so many words, Black people have a brilliant history that they know not of. He said, and it's sad what happened to them historically. That is not the greatest sin, not the greatest evil. The greatest evil is that they have turned around and done to themselves what white people have done to them. And if they only knew the spiritual brilliance that they had, they wouldn't be oppressed another day in their lives.
That is so powerful.
The inner.
And I think that is a message of hope. It
It
is
is.
a message of hope, and I really appreciate that. Your knowledge has been so helpful today. Thank
I
you
enjoy. Thank you.
for sharing your wisdom, your research, and your personal story. These conversations aren't always easy, but they are necessary. Healing begins with awareness, honest dialogue, and courageous action. Thank you to everyone listening to Striving with Crystal. If today's episode encouraged you, please subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and remember, your experiences matter, your healing matters, and together we can make everything crystal clear. If you are in Alabama or the Birmingham area, North Shore of Alabama is hosting a event on Saturday. Dr. DeWayne Stallworth will be presenting on race-based stress at the Negro Southern League Museum from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Don't quit, nurture your growth, and strive for a healthier you. Thank you, Dr. Stallworth, for
Thank
joining us.
you. Thank you.